The small diner on Fifth Avenue had seen thousands of customers come and go, but none quite like the little girl who stood trembling at table 7 that cold November evening. Her clothes were threadbare, her face smudged with dirt, and her eyes, those enormous brown eyes, held a kind of desperate hope that could break even the hardest heart. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, yet she carried herself with the cautious dignity of someone who had learned far too young that the world was not always kind. "May I have your leftovers, sir?" she whispered, her small voice barely audible above the clinking of silverware and the low murmur of evening conversations. Marcus Caldwell looked up from his plate, startled. In his 53 years of life, 30 of them spent building a financial empire that had made him one of the wealthiest men in Manhattan. He had encountered every kind of person imaginable. Business sharks who would sell their souls for a profit. Socialites who smiled with their mouths but never their eyes. Politicians who promised everything and delivered nothing. But this child, standing before him with her thin shoulders squared and her chin held high despite the obvious hunger gnawing at her belly, was something entirely different. Most people in his position would have called the manager. Some might have slipped her a few dollars and sent her on her way. A rare few might have ordered her a meal, but Marcus Caldwell did none of these things. Instead, he found himself looking into those eyes, and in that moment something shifted inside him. It wasn't pity he felt, though there was certainly compassion. It wasn't guilt, though he had plenty of that stored away in the locked chambers of his heart. No, what he felt was recognition. In those eyes, he saw something he had spent decades trying to forget. "What's your name?" he asked gently, setting down his fork. The girl hesitated, as if trying to determine whether this was a trap. "Emma, sir." "Emma." He repeated the name slowly, tasting it. "That's a beautiful name. Where are your parents, Emma?" Her eyes dropped to the floor. "My mama's sick. Real sick. She's waiting outside. We haven't eaten in 2 days." The restaurant continued its evening rhythm around them, oblivious to this quiet drama unfolding at table 7. A couple laughed at the bar. A waiter rushed past with a tray of steaming entrees. Somewhere in the kitchen, pots clanged against stainless steel. But in this small bubble of space between a millionaire and a hungry child, time seemed to slow down. Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Show me," he said, standing up abruptly. Emma's eyes widened in fear. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to bother you. Please don't call the police. My mama, she needs me." "I'm not calling the police," Marcus interrupted, his voice softer than he'd heard it in years. "I want to meet your mother." They found her on the bench outside, hunched against the November wind that cut through the city streets like a blade. She was young, perhaps 30, but illness and hardship had carved lines into her face that made her look a decade older. When she saw Emma emerge from the restaurant with Marcus behind her, terror flooded her features. "Emma, what did you do?" she gasped, trying to stand but swaying dangerously. "Ma'am, please sit down," Marcus said quickly, reaching out to steady her. His hand touched her arm, and he was shocked by how hot her skin felt, even through her worn jacket. This woman was burning with fever. "When was the last time you saw a doctor?" "We can't afford doctors," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She looked at her daughter with eyes full of love and despair. "Baby, I told you to wait here. I told you not to." "She was brave," Marcus said firmly. "Braver than most adults I know. What's your name?" Sarah Mitchell." She coughed, a deep, rattling sound that made Marcus wince. "Look, I know what you must think of us. We're not beggars by choice. I had a job. I had an apartment. But then I got sick and the bills piled up and—" Her voice broke. "I'm not a bad mother. I'm trying so hard." In that moment, Marcus saw it all clearly. The slow slide from stability into chaos. The impossible choices between medicine and food, between rent and doctor's visits. The gradual erosion of dignity that came with asking strangers for help. He had seen it happen to others from a comfortable distance, had written checks to charities and felt virtuous about his generosity. But standing here, feeling the fever heat radiating from this woman's skin, watching Emma's small hand clutch her mother's with fierce protectiveness, it became real in a way it never had before. "I don't think you're a bad mother," Marcus said quietly. "I think you're a warrior." Sarah blinked at him, tears spilling down her cheeks. Marcus pulled out his phone. I'm calling my driver. We're going to the hospital. Right now. We can't afford— You're not paying, Marcus said firmly, and we're not discussing it. The next few hours passed in a blur of emergency room lights and urgent conversations with doctors. Sarah was admitted immediately with severe pneumonia. Emma clung to Marcus's hand as they waited, her small fingers gripping his with desperate strength. He bought her food from the hospital cafeteria and watched as she ate slowly, carefully, as if she still couldn't quite believe it was real. "Why are you helping us?" Emma asked finally, looking up at him with those searching eyes. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his wallet and extracted an old, creased photograph. It showed a woman with kind eyes and a little boy with a gap-toothed smile. "That's my mother," he said softly. "And that's me when I was about your age. We were poor, Emma. So poor that sometimes we went days without eating. One winter, we were living in our car. My mother got sick just like yours, and a stranger helped us, a businessman in a fancy suit who happened to walk by when my mother collapsed on the street. He paid for her hospital care. He got us into a shelter. He even helped my mother find a job when she recovered." Emma stared at the photograph, then at Marcus. "What happened to him?" "The man who helped you? I never saw him again," Marcus admitted. "But I never forgot him. My mother used to say that angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they just have kind hearts. She made me promise that if I ever had the chance, I would be that angel for someone else." He tucked the photograph back into his wallet. "It took me 30 years to keep that promise. I got so caught up in making money, in building my empire, that I forgot what it felt like to be that little boy in the photograph. I forgot what really matters." "And what matters?" Emma asked. "This," Marcus said simply, gesturing around them. "Being here, helping, caring. Your mother said she's not a bad mother because she's trying so hard. But trying hard isn't enough when the whole system is rigged against you. Sometimes people just need a hand up, not a handout. Sometimes they need someone to see them as human beings, not problems to be solved or statistics to be ignored." Sarah recovered slowly. Marcus paid for everything: the hospital bills, the medications, the follow-up care. But he didn't stop there. He found them an apartment, modest but clean and safe. He connected Sarah with a job at one of his companies, a position that matched her skills and offered health insurance. He set up an education fund for Emma, ensuring that this bright, brave little girl would have opportunities her mother never had. But the real miracle wasn't in the money Marcus spent. It was in the transformation that occurred in his own heart. He started really seeing the people around him. The doorman at his building who worked 2 jobs to support his family. The woman who cleaned his office at night while studying for her nursing degree. The countless invisible people whose labor and effort kept his world running smoothly. He restructured his company's benefits package, adding health care and child care support. He started a foundation focused on preventing family homelessness. He began spending less time in boardrooms and more time volunteering at shelters and community centers. His colleagues thought he'd lost his mind. Some of his business associates distanced themselves, uncomfortable with this new version of Marcus Caldwell, who actually seemed to care about something other than profit margins. But Marcus had never felt more alive. Every morning when he woke up, he thought about that moment in the restaurant when a little girl asked for his leftovers and he chose to look into her eyes instead of looking away. That choice had changed everything. 2 years later, Marcus stood in the auditorium of Emma's school, watching her accept an award for academic excellence. Sarah sat beside him, healthy and thriving in her job, tears of joy streaming down her face. Emma's speech was short but powerful. "My teacher asked us to write about our heroes," Emma said, her voice clear and confident. "A lot of kids wrote about superheroes or famous people. But my hero is someone who taught me that the bravest thing you can do is ask for help when you need it. And the kindest thing you can do is say yes when someone asks. My hero is Mr. Caldwell, who didn't just give us food that night. He gave us hope. He gave us a future. But mostly he gave us his time and his heart. That's worth more than all the money in the world." As the audience applauded, Marcus felt tears running down his own cheeks. He thought about the businessman who had helped his mother all those years ago, and he hoped, wherever that man was, he knew that his kindness had rippled forward through time, touching lives he would never know about. That evening, as Marcus walked through the city streets toward his apartment, He passed a young man sitting on a corner with a sign asking for help. Without hesitation, Marcus stopped. He sat down next to the man. He asked his name. He listened to his story. And then he asked the question that changed everything. How can I help? Because that's what miracles look like in the real world. They're not lightning bolts from heaven or supernatural interventions. They're human beings choosing compassion over convenience, connection over comfort, love over indifference. They're millionaires who look into the eyes of hungry children and remember their own hunger. They're the moments when we choose to see each other's humanity instead of looking away. The world is full of people asking for leftovers. But sometimes, if we're brave enough to really look, we might discover they're offering us something far more valuable than anything we could give them. They're offering us the chance to be better than we were yesterday. They're offering us the opportunity to matter in ways that balance sheets and bank accounts never can. Marcus Caldwell learned that lesson from an 8-year-old girl named Emma who had the courage to ask a simple question. And in answering that question, he found something he didn't even know he'd been searching for. He found himself, the person he was always meant to be, the person his mother always believed he could become. That's the real miracle. Not that a millionaire helped a poor family, but that in helping them, he saved himself.